The baby clamped desperately onto the nipple, and he sucked and he sucked. When she saw the baby's face slowly grow peaceful, and when she heard the way he was swallowing, she began to suspect that something extraordinary had happened. Was it possible that she was feeding the baby? She removed the boy from her breast. A thin stream of milk sprayed out. Tita could not understand it. It wasn't possible for an unmarried woman to have milk, short of a supernatural act unheard of in these times. When the child realized he'd been separated from his meal, he started to wail again. Immediately, Tita let him take her breast until his hunger was completely satisfied, and he was sleeping peacefully like a saint. She was so absorbed in her contemplation of the child, she didn't notice Pedro coming into the kitchen. At this moment, Tita looked like Ceres herself, goddess of plenty. Pedro wasn't surprised in the least, nor did he need an explanation. Smiling delightedly, he went over to them, bent down, and kissed Tita on the forehead. Tita took the child, now satisfied, from her breast. When Pedro's eyes beheld the sight he had only glimpsed before through her clothing. Then Pedro's eyes beheld a sight that he had only glimpsed before through her clothing, Tita's breasts. Tita tried to cover herself with her blouse. Pedro helped her in silence with great tenderness. As he did, a succession of conflicting emotions took hold of them. Love, desire, tenderness, lust, shame, fear of discovery. The sound of Mama Eleanor's footsteps on the wooden floor warned them of the danger in time. Tita finished adjusting her blouse properly, and Pedro moved away from her as Mama Eleanor came into the kitchen. When she opened the door, she didn't see anything that wasn't socially acceptable. Nothing to make her worry. Still, there was something in the air. She could smell it, and she sharpened her senses to try and figure out what was troubling her. Tita, how is the child? Did you manage to get him to eat something? Yes, Mammy. He took some tea and fell asleep. Thank God. Then, Pedro, why aren't you taking the child to his mother? Children shouldn't be away from their mothers. Pedro left with the child in his arms, while Mama Eleanor carefully observed Tita, who had a sparkle in her eyes that Mama Eleanor didn't like at all. Is the chocolate atoll ready for your sister? Or is it atoll? I don't know. Yes, Mammy. Give it to me so I can take it to her. She needs to drink it a day and night so her milk will come in. But as much chocolate atoll as she drank, Rosaura never had any milk, whereas Tita had enough milk to feed Roberto and 2 more babies besides, if she'd wanted to, from that day on. As Rosaura was still weak sometimes, no one was surprised that Tita took over her nephew's feeding. What no one found out was how she fed him, since Tita, with Pedro's help, was very careful not to let anyone see her. Okay, so my camera had run out of memory, and I'm hungry and tired, and I've just got a little bit more to go, so let's try this again. For that reason, the baby, instead of driving them apart, actually brought them closer together. It was as if the child's mother was Tita and not Rosaura. That's how she felt and acted. The day of the baptism, how proudly she carried her nephew, showing him off to all the guests. Rosaura had to limit her appearance to the church since she felt too sick, so Tita took her place at the banquet. John Brown, the doctor, was watching Tita, charmed by her. He couldn't take his eyes off her. John had attended the baptism just to see if he could speak to her alone, even though he saw her every day during the house calls he made to Rosaura. He had never had a chance to speak freely to her without someone else being there. When Tita walked by the table where he was sitting, he got up and went over to her on the pretext of admiring the baby. How nice the child looks with such a beautiful aunt holding him. Thank you, doctor. He isn't even your own son. Imagine how pretty you will look with one of your own. A look of sorrow crossed Tita's face. John saw it and said, Forgive me. It seems I have said something wrong. No, it's not that. I can't marry or have children because I have to take care of my mother until she dies. But how can that be? It's absurd. But it's true. Now please excuse me. I have to attend to my guests. Tita quickly moved away from John, leaving him completely shaken. She was too, but she recovered when she felt Roberto in her arms. What did her fate matter when she had this child near her? This child who was as much hers as anybody's. Really, she did a mother's work without the official title. Pedro and Roberto were hers, and that was all she needed. Tita was so happy that she didn't realize that her mother, like John, except that she had a different motive, was not letting her out of her sight for a single instant. She was convinced that something was going on between Tita and Pedro. Trying to catch them, she didn't even eat, and she was so intent on the task of watching them that she hardly noticed the success of the party. Everyone agreed that a large part of the credit should go to Tita. The mole she had prepared was delicious. She kept getting compliments on her skill as a cook, and everyone wanted to know what her secret was. It was really a shame that as Tita was answering this question, saying that her secret was to prepare the mole with a lot of love, Pedro happened to be nearby, and with that they looked at each other for a fraction of a second, like conspirators, remembering when Tita had been bent over the grinding stone, for the eagle eye of Mama Eleanor saw the spark that flew between them from 20 feet away, and it troubled her deeply. Actually, among all the guests, she was the only one who felt at all troubled. Everyone, oddly enough, was in a euphoric mood after eating the mole. It had made them unusually cheerful. They laughed and carried on as if they never had before and wouldn't again for a long time. The threat of the revolution hung over them, bringing famine and death in its wake. But for those few moments they all seemed determined to forget the bullets flying in the village. The only one who never lost her control was Mama Eleanor, who was too busy looking for a way to vent her bad temper. When Tita was standing near enough not to miss a single word, she remarked to Father Ignacio in a loud voice, "The way things are going, Father, I worry that some day my daughter Rosaura will need a doctor and we won't be able to get one, like when Roberto was born. As soon as she gets her strength back, I think it would be best if she went to live with my cousin in San Antonio with her husband and little boy. She would receive better medical attention there." "I don't agree, Donna Eleanor, because of the political situation. You need a man to defend the house." "I've never needed a man for anything. I've done all right with my ranch and my daughters all by myself. Men aren't that important in this life, Father," she said emphatically, "nor is the revolution as dangerous as you make out. It's worse to have chilies with no water around." "Oh, that is true," he replied, laughing. "Ah, Donna Eleanor, always so clever. And tell me, have you thought about where Pedro will work in San Antonio? He can start work as an accountant in my cousin's company. He shouldn't have any problem. His English is perfect." Those words echoed like cannons inside Tita's head. She couldn't let it happen. They couldn't take the child away from her now. She had to keep that from ever happening. Meanwhile, Mama Eleanor had managed to ruin the party for her. The first party in her life that she had enjoyed. And then it says, to be continued. And I will see you next time. Bye!